was younger, I used to sit with my granny and she would tell me stories. It was usually at dusk. That was the best time. That was the time when the warm would start to go from a really hot day and it would feel cool. That little time after bath time, before bedtime, when you just chill and, sit down, chewing on sugar cane like Granny had skimmed for you, and listening to these stories that took you everywhere and anywhere that you could imagine. So today I'm going to tell you a story, or stories, the first one of which is called Salt. Gettin's house sat on the top of a hill at the end of a dirt road, which Granny seemed to know instinctively as she guided Mum through the tracks. Now how was that possible? That was beyond me, but Granny was odd and powerful like that. Like as she could sense the way in all things, whether that was the darkness of night, and I mean proper night, not midnight, but when everyone sleeps and the quiet is loud like grown-up night. So slowly we began to turn away from the coast. That's where you map your way from everything really, where it's the name of beaches that tell you whether you're at the top or tails of the island. Calm and angry, smooth and rough, this was the rough side of Barbados. Granny and Mum speak of many names of people that are close, or not seen for a while. So to get to see Gettin, I immediately thought this means something to Granny, and it had been a long time. They will be old, I assume, and have that old smell surrounded by old things, from where the road had taken us into old Barbados, away from the new hotels and the frequent tourists. Sometimes I think we are just like the old tourists that come as well, as we don't live here, but we call it home. We come too often and know the island too well to be on holiday, and that seems to insult Mum's heart anyway, because how can you call somewhere, how can somewhere be a home and be a holiday? A home you don't have a choice about, kind of like how you see yourself. You have no choice but to learn it anew as you are. All these things fleet through my mind as I watch the brush scrape the sides of the car sometimes, or look down into the abyss of a gully. The gullies always make me nervous. The longer you look down into the gully, into the dark green, the more it absorbs you into it like the blue of the sea. You just can't see past the colour after a time. I had heard stories that helicopters had crashed and burned all the way down into the gullies at their deepest, and no one ever saw the fire or explosion. That was how deep they ran into the earth. They never found the people that were inside either. The gullies are mouths into the rainforest. They swallow whatever falls in, so I hold tight to the door as I look through the car window, trying to see what no one has been able to see before. Soon the road widens and clears, and as we creep forward, the little chattel house comes into view, surrounded by palm and breadfruit trees. It's a little grubby pastel green like Dad's old Wolseley, where the outside colour matches the colour of the seats and the carpet. That soft green with a couple of broken slats, so I can see a little past the window inside. That I think is always funny, that no matter the house, there is always a lace curtain over the window. It's like every chattel house we gave life with a granny inside, that decorated it, and then the next family moved in. As we come to a halt and open the doors, the smell of the sea started to overtake Mum's perfume, another indication that it was a special occasion. I opened the door and stepped out, and breathed into my lungs the sea air. I love the smell of salt and water, one of the oldest smells I've ever known. I love the smell of that. The only difference between home in England and in Barbados is whether the smell is warm or cold. This is warm and floods my ears as it smells heavy, and a soft roar whispers underneath, and it fills my ears as well. It's a comfort and a welcome. I walk behind Granny, peeping to see the old man emerge from the house. His head is bald and his skin shines deep like Granny's wooden chairs, rich brown against silver whiskers around the bottom half of his face. The shirt, like Granny's dress, is crisp with sharp lines, from ironing it this morning probably. I look up at Granny and she beams, all teeth and arms raised, and Gettin does the same, guiding her into the house. Mum next and I follow, and then turns the Bayesian. Words flowing into each other, long time no see, joyful and full of excitement. The house is small, yet through each window I can feel the height of the hill the house sits upon. Gran sits with Mum on the other side of Gettin, and I stand, smile, hello, which follows with the usual you're big and so on, which I swear no matter what country you're in is what grown-ups say. Granny, Gettin and Mum settled in to catch up, and I headed outside to play. As I turned towards the front door, I could see the wind in the canes to the sea. I walked forward, breathing in everything, and stand there on the hill, inhaling the warm sea around me, as the voices of the house become quiet behind me as well. I wonder how is it possible that the sea can reach me all the way up here and far away, but I can smell it as if I'm swimming in the shallows. When you watch the waves crash against the shore on a bad day, sea spray flies off the lines of the rocks and into the air, but for them to reach me, they haven't fallen. They've caught a current, a swell of air rising above the permanently bent trees that bow to cover the hillside. Rising, and still they rise in warm, reducing in size as the humid air and salt embrace one another, climbing once again as the tree line and Gettin's house comes into view. And that tiny circle of salt water sees me as I have watched and imagined their pathway to me. I can't see them now as they are so tiny my eyes can't trace them, but my nose senses them as they reach, internalizing themselves within myself, causing my eyes to fall as I look up into the sky, imagining the clouds that will form rain that will come down on me tomorrow as I swim in the sea, and I taste the salt on my tongue, and I wonder if Granny has some sugarcane in the car actually, because I love sweet and salty. This story is called Red Lake. I always loved the nature programmes on the BBC, rooting through the Amazon or the forests of Papua New Guinea and the tribes within it. There was this programme the other day with this man hanging out of the plane, right, whilst filming the rainforest below, and you saw these people covered in red and blue markings all over their body. David Attenborough said that they were uncontracted tribes, and they were so hard, and that was so hard for me to understand. They reminded me of the pigs we learned about at school as well. They could cover themselves in patterns and colours, and they would carve into standing stones in sea caves. Yesterday was a creepy, strange day, which had me looking into the depths of the gullies and rainforest once again, as Mum, I and Auntie Cherry travelled to the East Coast for the Asian buffet lunch. Oh my God, so good. Fried chicken in deep, brown, rich gravy that sinks into the rice like melted chocolate, plus as much coleslaw and lime cucumber pickle as I could get while you sit at the table, feet in the sand, watching the waves. It's always cool too, as the wind races and reaches up the hill, racing towards Gettin's house. I'm hungry again just thinking about it. As we travelled through the heart of the island where the bearded fig trees grow, closer and closer together, until the area roots falling from the canopy join up and they hang like curtains along the roads, and sometimes you can't even see through them into the forest and their coral caves below. This journey is always one of my favourite parts of the drive. After the sea, which is my first favourite, seeing and walking the rainforest or gully is my second favourite, like Walton Hall Gully. It's wet and it's warm. It's like plants are breathing, glowing, and you can walk the length of the gully and trees, climbing the sides and seem to reach on forever up into the sky. I think what I love about the sea is the same thing I love about the rainforest, or just forests that feel like they're alive, with everything breathing and loud, and like the trees are teeming with life and everything is hidden. I think that's what yesterday felt like, as if there was something hidden that I was trying to see, trying to chase to see if they were real. I have to go back now, I think. Mum, Cherry and I follow the roads through the parishes into the hills, where you don't see the tourists anymore, as you're far from the hotels and the sun lounges and the pretty swimming pools. As we went along, Mum saw a couple of stands at the side of the road selling roast corn and fruities. The red one tastes like cherryade, and it's my second favourite after Plus, which tastes like sugarcane. Like sugarcane Lucasade, I'd say that's the closest way I can describe it. While they ordered, I sat in the car and looked across the side of the road to where a house sat that I passed but not probably looked at before. The house was different from the usuals that you see, like the chattel houses or the beach houses behind huge gates and nicely cut bushes. This one looked like it was made of palm leaves knitted together, and there were symbols on the side of the house, and it had pyramid roofs on different levels. It was quite big, like 3 chattel houses put together, and it sat deep into the trees that hugged all around it. It was a place that I thought, this is where people go if they needed something. I just wasn't sure what those things would be. I asked Mum what it was, and she answered, it's just a house. Auntie Cherry turned as well, but their eyes stayed on the house and they got dark. If it's one thing Mum does when you ask her a question, is to think, why use one word to answer when you can use many? This meant that there had to be something to be careful about if Mum doesn't want to talk. And Cherry, my favourite auntie, said nothing when the family knows she sees things. So that was a strange time. I saw this house many times as I grew up, many times, and I still do. Mum took the roasted corn and the fruities, and we were away again, up in the hills away from the house. It was a while before I tuned into Mum and Auntie Cherry's conversation, as I was deep in thought, wondering who would live in a house like that, when I caught the words, redleg. Gettin says he's seen a redleg. When? Said Auntie Cherry with a drop bottom lip. One moment, for me either shock or laughter. That was why she was my favourite aunt. You never knew which way she was going to go, but she was always fun no matter which way she was feeling. Over yonder up in Bell, St. Joseph or something. You know you probably see it before you see a redleg, Marge. Mum raised a brow and returned with, I'm just telling you what the man said, Cheryl. Ooh, Mum was getting annoyed. Now using Cherry's real name and calmed that conversation very quickly, but that made me curious all of a sudden. What's a redleg, Mum? I asked. They're people that came to our place a long time ago and they're seeing their red in the sun. They stay in the bush now away from people deep in the country. No one ever sees them in a long time. It's like they're part of the world now. I nodded in understanding, of course, yes. I knew what a W was, the spirit of those that had passed but continued to live in this world. They would be tricky depending how they lived before they actually passed. But a redleg was a new thing for me. I remember the programme I watched back home ages ago about this tribe in the forest. They stood and they walked and looked around the forest as if they were a part of it, and looked at you through the trees, wondering why you were so awkward, clumsy and red. Gosh, I know that feeling when the very air around you is so hot you just have to stand in the hot spots and like sweat. Where the only thing that doesn't make you feel like you're going to melt is to stand there in your pants and vest and that hot take to flow. You know, you're flapping your hands under your arms, trying to cool yourself down in the strangest way. As we sped past through the bush, I kept my eyes open as I looked into the rainforest. What else was there? If I saw that house, then maybe I might see one of the redlegs. Maybe they were a tribe like the one I saw on TV. As I looked through the trees and the bearded fig trees, different things entirely, I wondered how easy they would be to spot if I turned red in the sun, and how red was red. I don't think it's that sunburn red, like, you know, when people look like they're in pain, but that deep red I saw on the tribe in the Amazon covered in lines, and the pattern of red and blue paint. Would I spot a flash of red against the green of the trees and plants or the white of the coal state? Would I glimpse a hummingbird in the garden? As people walked down the side of the road, I glanced on their legs, looking for signs of paint, or just signs. Maybe they didn't wash it off properly when they were on their way to the market for lunch or to see a friend. Maybe deep in the forest, the wildest places, everyone had at least one red leg. Mum told me about the first people that lived in Barbados came from South America in canoes called Arawaks, who were fishing people, and quite chill from the way Mum speaks about them. And then you had the Caribs, who were fighters and kept trying to take the fish off the Arawaks. Either way, I don't think they were friends. That's the thing. These redlegs live and are more of the wild magic of the hills and east coast in my head. Living in a tiny chattel house, no paint, so you can't tell what's trees and what's home, so they're the same thing. My dad says that that's where the wild things live, where the ducklings and spirits play and the sharks and surfers swim. That's where I've always dreamed of having my own little house someday, where the wind blows through one end of the house to the other, and I can see all the way down to the sea from the front door. The kite competition. It's time to get serious. Kites are a serious thing, like sandballs. The same as a snowball, as in you make it into a ball and throw it, but if you want them to travel far, you have to make the ball out of wet sand, then you dig a hole in dry sand, like hot dry sand, cover it with the dry sand and bake it by the sun for a bit, like let's say about 10 minutes, and then when you take them out, they're like cricket balls, okay? Well, that's how my Uncle Pecky taught me to make them. Uncle Pecky is like a willow tree. His dreadlocks fall past his crown, almost past his waist, and that is a long lot, let me tell you. When I think of Uncle Pecky, he's giant tall and slim like a young tree. Uncle Pecky would take me to the corner shop stand around the corner from Granny's. The lady there has all kinds of things, but my favourite were the kites. Mum said that when she was little, they used to be made of newspaper or lollipop sticks, but this time when I went with Uncle Pecky, they were made of coloured tissue paper, and that looks like a kaleidoscope of so many colours. I fell in love with that one and turned to Uncle Pecky, begging with my eyes and beaming smile, and got a smile back. Uncle Pecky's smiles were the best because they stretched around his whole face, so you knew he was so happy to make you happy, and that was the best, and made him my favourite uncle. He brought me the kite and I was so excited. I said I had to get a reel of string and make the tail, but that's all I needed to do. I'd seen Granny, she was making clothing, dresses and things. She was always making things, that sewing machine, which was beautiful. And I think this time it was this lovely multicoloured dress for the lady down the road, so that meant lots of scraps that would match my kite. I skipped back with Uncle Pecky and went straight to Granny's sewing room. If you have ever seen Granny behind her singer sewing machine, she reminded me of like a fairy godmother deep in thought as she worked around the clock to produce these like fairy tale dresses, these gorgeous things. Her foot would go up and down as she pumped the step below the iron table that it sat on. And Granny would have her nails cut sharp into points so that if the stitch was wrong, she could just pinch the stitch together and pull it out. Granny gave me a little pinch once when I was naughty, and I tell you, it hurt really badly, and there was like two tiny little lines on my wrist. I looked up to Granny and waited for her to notice me. The needle ran so fast, and now the fabric, it was a blur, and I didn't want to make her jump. Plus, she's my granny. You don't scare grannies. Not cool. She stopped and turned at the end of the seam and looked at me with that soft turn up on one side of the mouth that stopped her from looking serious. Granny, Uncle Pecky brought me a kite. Can I pick some fabric for the tail? She winked and humphed at the same time that she giggled. I immediately bent down and started to gather the long pieces of fabric off the floor in the colours that I wanted. She always had that satin fabric that you could use for the inside of clothes, which was cool as well. And I arranged the pieces from big to small, as I wanted big knotted bows at the top of the tail closest to the kite, and then for them to get smaller as it came to the end. While I finished the kite, and also picked a reel of thread to tie off the kite as well, Uncle Pecky fried some breadfruit chips on the cooker, but I was too excited to eat. Plus, if I hurried up, I could make it go fly the kite this afternoon before it got dark. As soon as I was done, I raced to Uncle Pecky for him to check it and attach the thread to the central string. He looked closely and tested my knotted bows. Is it ready? Can we go, please? He looked at me as he chewed his breadfruit chips, and smiled the smile that said we were going to have a great afternoon. I was out the side door before he could even stand up, standing with my kite in my hand, and I could hear my mum laughing where she sat on the sofa. I was already on my way to the common as I heard Uncle Pecky running to catch up with me. I ran to the centre of the field and then turned to my uncle. He gave me the red thread reel and told me to go back and start running as he held the kite closer to the sky, closer than anyone else on the common. I was so excited I didn't even notice the others there. As I ran, I looked back and I saw it lift and lift and lift, catching the wind immediately, and the tail ripped around like an angry snake in the sky, reflecting so many colours. It rose higher and higher, and the top became stronger and stronger on the thread, so it felt like it was miles away from me. This little disc high above a whipping tail. I felt like I'd stayed there for ages, moving left or right, running and walking. As the kite dipped and rose, I stayed until sundown like all the other kids, as everyone had bought kites from the corner shop lady. The problem now was getting it back in. Slowly I reeled it in, and it came on really neat. But with every metre I reeled it in, it came in a little bit easier on the next one. Eventually I could see all of the colours on the disc, and the long tail was whipping less, but all of a sudden the wind died and it crashed to the floor, hitting the ground hard, and I knew that wasn't good. You know that feeling. I raced to the kite and saw a great tail running along one side of the tissue paper. I was so upset and wanted to cry right there. Christina? I turned and looked up at my Uncle Pecky as he leaned down with his willow branches and strong arms to scoop me off the floor to cuddle me and walk me home. He called my name again as I stared at the kite. Christina, Christina! This is life. We play with something beautiful for a short time, and that makes us beautiful because we got to be a part of it, we got to play. But all joyful things come to an end. That is how we know it and love it the next time we feel it, because you never know when you'll get it again. I took the kite, handing over. I can fix this, so I know we're going to be joyful again tomorrow. I beamed at him with all of my eyes and face and enjoyed the journey home so right in his arms. That was a beautiful day, as was the next. Wow, that's gone really high.
Pick it up, Josh. It's up there.